Welcome to the HerbWorks podcast featuring Roger Drummer, the formulator at HerbWorks.com. An educator in the field of nutrition and Chinese herbalism, Roger has a unique ability to keep things simple by taking all the guesswork out of complicated health issues. HerbWorks is committed to helping you improve your health and enhance your life through herbs and common sense.
Hello, everyone. This is Laura.
And Roger Drummer.
And welcome back to an HerbWorks podcast. Today, we are talking about the ketogenic diet. What's the big deal? So we're going to be covering ketosis, the principles of ketosis versus medical ketosis, and how it relates to cancer. Is that correct?
Yes. We're going to talk about everything about ketogenic diet, the basic principles, how you can use it for treatment of certain chronic conditions.
Okay, well, first of all, it's a really big word. So what the heck does it mean, ketogenic diet? And is that the way you say it? It's not ketogenic? I would say ketogenic.
No, it's ketogenic.
Okay.
And ketogenic diet basically is all about the process of ketosis.
And what is ketosis?
Ketosis is the ability of your body to take stored energy, fats, and send it to your liver and transform it into a type of water-soluble fat so that your cells can use it for energy.
So it's a metabolic process?
It's a metabolic process.
So ketosis is a metabolic process of the body?
Yes. Everybody can get into ketosis.
I would say, why do we care about ketosis as opposed to,
it's a survival mechanism.
In
Basically,
what way?
Everybody knows, probably everyone knows that the body runs on sugar. Everybody's programmed.
Glucose, right?
Glucose. We run on glucose. Insulin is secreted, takes glucose, shoves it into your cells. It's a little more complicated than that. It has to turn that into a little bit of a fat itself, and it gets stored.
Right, but mostly we think about our body's energy system running on whatever our body converts into sugar.
Yes.
Whether it's eating sugar or eating carbohydrates that get turned into sugar.
Proteins get turned into sugar.
Okay.
Everything gets transformed.
So that's our basic metabolic state that most people are familiar with.
Yeah.
How is ketosis different than that?
Ketosis, again, which everybody has the ability to naturally go into ketosis, that's a survival mechanism because, a million years ago, people didn't have access to food all the time. And so your body, in times of starvation, had to have a mechanism by which it kept your brain and your heart going so you could survive during long periods of starvation. Because more than likely, there's going to be a phase or two during the year where you might go 30 days and not have any food. Or you might have very scant amount of calories that you have access to in the winter, or maybe you're one of those nomadic tribes and you just don't find anything, or maybe you're just a terrible hunter.
Maybe you're just a terrible hunter, and you're relying on your wife, who is the gatherer, or perhaps she was the hunter.
Maybe you're just slow. But anyway,
maybe no one in your family has the hunter-gatherer thing down.
Yeah.
So this is an alternative process in the body for what?
Process for survival. So your brain cells and your heart run really well on ketones. And so if your body can then break down its stored fat, turn it into that energy source, and then you can run your brain and your heart. And this is the most important thing. It has to keep your brain alive. So that
Wait. Go back just a second. What's turning into sugar? The fat?
No, when your sugar is taken out of a normal diet and stored in your cells, it's turned into a type of fatty acid.
Right. We all know that fat can be converted to energy.
When you release that in ketosis, when you release that, your body will send that to your liver, which transforms it into a water-soluble fat called a ketone, which then all the cells in your brain and your heart can run off of that.
When your body releases what? What's getting turned into a ketone?
The fat cells that you normally have.
Oh, okay.
Your stored energy.
Adipose tissue or fat cells.
Think about it this way. Most people, long time ago, gorged at the end of the summer because that's when the plants were putting out all kinds of fruit.
Sure, and we have, even religious rituals around feasting.
Excessive food intake just to store fat for the winter, so they had some extra weight.
Yeah, my body knows how to do that.
Everybody knows how to do that. But then they go through this period where they don't have much food or any at all for weeks at a time, and then their body can take that, break it down, and turn it into something else to run off of. What we've done in modern times is figure out how to actually turn that on without going through starvation.
How to flip the switch for that
How to flip
process.
the switch. It's all about flipping your metabolism from being glucose dominant to ketosis or ketone dominant.
Okay, so what's the advantage of being ketone dominant? Why would I want to do that versus just letting my body run on its normal process of glucose?
Well, if you don't have any health problems and you're feeling really good,
I feel really good.
I don't know why you'd
problems.
want to go through the process, really. But the reality is that it originally was used to treat epilepsy. And it was very good at treating epilepsy until some drug companies came out with some drugs, and that was much easier. Because back in the 20s and 30s, when they introduced this diet for epilepsy, it was really strict. I mean, you were down to 600 calories sometimes, depending on what you were actually doing to get into ketosis, and that's like starvation, right? So that didn't work real well. But
they lost patience, perhaps.
But then there was this resurgence of using it also for cancer, back in the 60s, and epilepsy. But again, it's very, very restrictive.
Well, what's the basis of wanting to use it as medicine, basically, is what you're saying, a medical diet?
Well, here's what it's all about. And I want to state this right up front so we know you don't have to starve anymore, because modern science and modern the nutritional world has expanded so much that we now have all these tools that allow us to get into ketosis without even losing weight, without starving at all, and you can consume a normal amount of calories. It's just about flipping your metabolism.
I guess I don't understand the relationship of starvation with ketosis. I don't get
Well,
this.
the reason is that you want to get into a phase where your blood sugar is really low, and you can only do that by not eating any calories, right?
That's the only way to get your blood sugar low?
Usually, yes, because you're going to use up your stored energy, your sugar that's in your system, within a day or two of not eating, right? And then that's what's going to trigger ketosis, the release of fat to be transformed into a ketone so that you now have an alternative source of fuel. That's not going to happen if your sugar's over 100, because the body doesn't need it. It already has a source of energy. You have to prove to the body that it doesn't have sugar to run on before it'll flip its metabolic switch. And so
is that what the ketogenic diet is? Is having very low amounts of calories?
That's what it originally was about.
Okay, so that's
but
different
that's not
than what
what it
the
is
hype
today.
is now.
No.
All right, I think it's really important to make that distinction. You're talking about the origins of this diet that were used to have calorie-restricted intake to treat specific medical conditions,
Right.
such as epilepsy and
cancer.
And that's very different than how most people might be hearing the buzz about ketogenic diet today.
Well, it can still be used to treat those conditions, but because of the advances in nutritional science and science in general, we have the ability to go into ketosis without starvation. And so now it makes it much easier. And really, a lot of the resurgence of this diet had to do with just helping people lose weight, because people tend to, the theory is that you can burn more calories when you're on a high-fat diet, and then your sugar's always regulated, so you're not putting on pounds. And people who have tried almost every other diet tend to lose weight on the ketogenic diet.
All right, so then I think we better define, what is the ketogenic diet? What is it? What's the basis?
The ketogenic diet generally means you're eating at least 70% of your calories from fat.
From fat?
From fat. About 5% from carbohydrates, and the rest from lean proteins.
So tell me,
or fatty proteins.
What does that
It doesn't
look
have to
like
be
for
lean.
breakfast, lunch, and dinner? I mean, what are you talking about?
That looks like avocados, nuts, eggs, salmon. You can have a steak. You can have,
so
all these
protein
fatty
and
things.
fat. It could be animal protein. It could be vegetable
Animal protein, vegetable protein. But, You don't want to overconsume protein because anything over 25 to 30 grams is converted into sugar. And the whole thing about the ketogenic diet is regulating your sugar.
Okay, so back to what the ketogenic diet consists of. You've got foods that are high in fat, such as what we think of as fatty foods off the top of the list: butter, avocados, almond oil, avocado oil, any of those type of olive oils, those regular.
Olive oil is great. Coconut oil is great. I wouldn't get into too many different refined oils. You don't really want to do that. You want to confine it to whole foods, so raw nuts. You know, any type really raw nuts, except for maybe peanuts, aren't going to fall into that category. But walnuts, pecans, macadamia nuts.
So lots
Brazils.
of nuts, possibly lots of meat, if that's how you're getting your protein.
No, not lots of meat.
No?
No, because the ketogenic diet is also a protein-sparing diet, meaning that because of the levels of fat that you have and your metabolism has changed, you don't need to consume large amounts of protein. In fact, it's detrimental to the whole overall diet because consuming too much protein just gets transformed into sugar. That's what your body does with it. So
you're looking basically for a ratio, is what I'm hearing you say, of more fat than anything else.
Yes.
Followed by protein secondarily. And then what about carbohydrates? What about bread, fruit, things that we normally would
especially
consider...
when you start, you're not going to really be eating bread or fruit. Now, you can add fruit back in a little bit after you've been in ketosis a while and see how your body handles it. But if you're looking at ketosis and you want to get into it, you're probably going to stop both those things.
So meaning no grains at all?
Usually no grains,
So no quinoa, no rice, no amaranth, no alternative.
Not in the beginning, no.
And why?
Because those are all carbohydrates that raise your sugar. And once your blood sugar goes up, your body starts to switch back to metabolizing sugar.
So basically,
you go out of ketosis.
Right. So to get to ketosis in a healthy way, you're trying to give the body enough calories from fat and proteins without giving it an excessive way or an easy way to convert carbohydrates such as grains and fruits into immediate sugar. Is that what I understand?
Immediate sugar, because again, you have to regulate your blood sugar, or none of these processes will actually take hold in your system.
So the ketosis,
once your sugar goes up, the ketosis gets shut off.
So the ketosis is a byproduct of what's happening with your blood sugar?
It's part of the whole process. And so I want to make a distinction here before we go any farther. There's levels of ketosis.
Okay.
One level is nutritional ketosis. This is what most people are actually doing.
You mean the diet fad? I'm on a ketogenic diet, and so that means
the diet. It means nutritional ketosis, which means around 70% fat. They have a lot of lean proteins,
and
or
they're
even
eating
fatty
some grains
proteins.
or no grains.
Depends on the person and how they actually handle them, but they probably aren't eating very many at all. It just depends on how you metabolize certain foods. And then you have what they call low glycemic vegetables. Those become your carbs. And for those, you can eat mostly any amount you want, because
you're still talking about an overall diet as opposed to a medical diet.
In nutritional ketosis, you want to eat as much low glycemic whole vegetables as you want, because they don't really raise the blood sugar very much. Mm-hmm. You know, they're low glycemic, meaning low sugar load. And so those types of food, because they also have fiber in them, are very regulating to your system. They don't raise your blood sugar. They fill you up, and they become a very important part of the nutritional ketosis.
So you're talking about the ketogenic diet as a lifestyle choice for people.
It's a lifestyle
versus
choice.
What?
Versus just the typical diet, which is based mostly on
No, I mean, you said there were
carbohydrate.
different kinds of ketogenic diets.
Yeah, there's nutritional ketosis,
which would be a lifestyle choice.
And then there's medical ketosis.
Medical ketosis.
Here's
That's
the difference.
Different
With
kind
nutritional
of diet.
ketosis, you want to kind of shoot for having your blood sugar around 80. That's a really healthy level. And it's pretty easy to maintain nutritional ketosis. Usually with that, your blood sugar's around 80. When you measure your ketones, they're around 2. You have to have a blood meter, by the way, where just like with a diabetic, where you prick your finger and you take a reading. Mm-hmm. Well, you get a machine that does the...
You don't have to have that to go on a ketogenic diet.
No, you don't have to. But if you really want to get precise with it and know what you're doing, you buy one. And they're not very expensive. They're $20. And then you have to buy the strips. But you test your blood. And you always want it to be around 80 because that's a really healthy level of blood sugar. And then your ketones around 2, something like that. And so that means you're in nutritional ketosis, which basically means at certain times you're burning fat. And at certain times you can burn some sugar for energy.
All right. Why would I want to take all this trouble of not having grains, not having fruit, eating tons of fat, which sounds like fun, the fat part. And why are people doing this as a lifestyle choice, this ketogenic diet, the nutritional ketogenesis versus what you will talk about soon, the medical ketogenesis? Well, why do people do this?
You might want to do it because you just want to be on a healthier diet. And most of the research coming out in nutrition now shows that the foods that we always thought were bad for us, the fatty foods, are actually really great for you. It's great for your skin, your brain, your heart, all these different things.
Avocado, eggs.
Avocado, egg yolk, uncooked egg yolk, fish oil, olive oil, coconut oil. All these things are really great for you, and raw nuts. And so, that might be your reason to do it. You might be just that you put on 4 or 5 pounds.
So people are doing it to lose weight.
Yeah, they do it to lose weight.
But is it sustainable?
Or you could be doing it because you're an American and you just love to get into fad things. I don't know.
But so, if you want to do it to lose weight, is it sustainable in the way that, say, a lot of people have done the Atkins diet or...
Well, this is different than Atkins. Atkins is similar, and everybody loves to dump, kind of lump it in with Atkins, but it's different. It's focused more on nutrition.
Okay, but you're still looking at whole foods.
You're looking at whole foods.
Even if you're not eating a lot of grains, or you're just restricting your grain intake on your fruit intake. So you're lowering what might be immediately turned into sugar in the body in an effort to have generally lower blood sugar.
Lower blood
so
sugar,
that
which
what
is
happens?
Tied into almost every chronic disease.
Right, so lower blood sugar equal less inflammation.
Less inflammation.
Equals to holding on to less fat in the body.
Holding on to less fat. You don't have as much sugar to be stored for energy. Fat is stored energy. And so if you regulate your blood sugar, you have access to fats that you're running off of. The body seems to work really well for certain people. And then that's, a pretty healthy diet. And, with that, you're still adding in some carbs. And, it's not like it's as restrictive as the next phase we're going to talk about, which is the medical ketosis. Okay, now, that's a different ballgame.
Right. Okay. So before we get into that, let's just recap for a minute so that I understand it. Basically, the buzz about the ketogenic diet is that a lot of people may be trying it for weight loss, right? Or because they may just want to be generally healthier by having lower blood sugar in general and reducing inflammation in general in their bodies. Yes. Okay. And so I know there's a lot of cookbooks and all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of ways to get information about this particular diet, but that's why it's currently kind of in the news and people are interested in it. And it's a very different thing than what medical ketosis is.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about medical ketosis. How is that different than a general nutritional ketogenic diet?
Well, medical ketosis, now you've obviously have a medical condition, right?
Okay, what might that be?
Might be epilepsy, but more often it's cancer.
So people that have cancer have looked into this kind of diet.
All
right, you yourself
yes, I have had cancer, and I use this diet to get rid of my cancer, and it worked really well.
Oh, okay. Do you want to talk about what kind of cancer you
had?
And
let me explain what medical ketosis is first. Medical ketosis, back in the 60s when they did it, it involved starving because you had to literally get your blood sugar down to around 60. which is very low, and your ketones up so that your body was running strictly on ketones. And the reason for this was that they were trying to starve your cancer cells to death. And that theory comes from the 1930 Nobel Prize, which was given to a doctor named Otto Warburg, who came up with the theory, the hypothesis, that cancer cells express a new metabolism and can only run off fermented glucose. And so now,
I have to say, it's amazing that you're talking about this. You don't have any notes. You have just obviously researched this so much, or it's so much a part of your life. You're not speaking from any notes as we're talking about.
I used it to get rid of cancer. I don't really need a note. So basically this theory, and what he proved was that the mitochondria of the cell, which the mitochondria is this little bitty thing that produces energy, and it's in every cell. It's how your cells make ATP out of energy, right? Well, every one of your cells could have anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 or more mitochondria, right? So when a cancer cell expresses itself, or a cell becomes cancerous, the mitochondria of that cell expresses its own new DNA. And basically that DNA switches its metabolism from a normal cell's metabolism, which can use glucose and oxygen and things to make energy. Now it strictly can only run off fermented glucose. So,
hold on. I'm sorry. That's a lot to understand. So you're saying that research has proved since the 1900s?
Yes.
Okay. That when cancer is present in a cell or takes over the cell, there's a metabolic change that happens. And that is what exactly? Say that again.
The mitochondria of the cell, cancer cell, expresses a new DNA which converts its metabolism of that cell to just running off of fermented glucose.
So now your body wants more sugar.
Your cancer cells love sugar. And so that cell now requires 18 times more sugar than a regular cell to actually survive.
So why doesn't... Oh, well, that begs the question of a lot of things.
This is interesting because I've had cancer, and you can mention this to doctors, and they'll say, well, sugar has nothing to do with it. Well, if you ever go in to get a scan, and they want to check your whole body for cancer,
right?
They give you a big sugary drink.
Why?
Because the sugar goes straight into your cancer cells and they all glow.
So that's how they find the cancer cells. Is because the cancer cells have some quicker uptake
some
of the
chemical with
glucose.
the sugar, so that when you drink it, it goes right to your cancer, and then they put you under the scan and you light up wherever you have cancer. So that's how they find it. So, but they'll tell you, they try to deny that there's this process by that, or deny that sugar has anything to do with it. But the reality is, now that your metabolism has switched in that cell, it cannot switch it off. The only way that cancer cell can stop having that metabolism for extra fermented glucose is if it becomes a healthy cell again. And that's actually possible. Most people don't realize this. That cancerous cell can actually flip and go back to being a healthy cell.
Don't we all always have cancer cells? I mean, or we could have cancer cells floating around in our body.
Your body's producing them by the thousands all the time.
But it only becomes, quote, cancer when they're conglomerated in a certain area.
When your immune system's not taking care of them, and they start to group up and form a tumor.
Right, kind of like how we all might have been exposed to a virus, but you only get sick if your immune system is a little overwhelmed dealing with that virus.
Yes.
Then you have the symptoms of it, and then your body deals with it. So you're saying that cancer acts similarly that way in our body? I'm kind of making an analogy. Maybe it fits, maybe it doesn't.
Well, the tumor is for a tumor to show up on a medical screen, it has to have millions and millions. I forget the exact number. It's an unbelievable number of cancer cells, right? So they start to develop.
Right. So for some reason,
it might take 20 years for it to show up.
Which is what you think might have happened with your tumor, right?
Yeah, I don't try to think about it a whole lot, but You don't know. So that's the part with cancer, in my opinion. You're never going to figure out exactly why you have it. You're just not. There's no way to figure that out. You can check and look at all the different things going on in your body that might have created the condition and deal with that.
Or what exposures you've had to certain chemicals.
Everybody has exposures to chemicals. Everybody has all these things, but not everybody gets it. So you want to, in my opinion, you want to give up on the idea of finding out exactly how you got it. You just want to get rid of it. And you want to put your body in a position to where it's best handling. In other words, you want to fix the things that are off in your own system so that it doesn't come back so easily.
Okay, so that's how you used the ketogenic diet as a medicinal tool, right? In addition to whatever else.
So with medical ketosis, though, since Warburg came up with this theory, is that you put your body into a very low state of sugar and a high state of ketones. And you want to get your ketones up to at least 4 to 5, which is a pretty high rating of ketones. And then you want to have your sugar down around 60 to 65, somewhere below 70.
That's pretty low blood sugar.
It's low blood sugar, but the difference between that and someone with just low blood sugar is that a person with hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar, would feel like they're going to pass out when their blood sugar is 65. But somebody that's in ketosis actually feels really good because they're not running on sugar. It doesn't mean anything. They have to have their ketones up to a certain level. And once they do that and their body's running on ketones, blood sugar doesn't mean that much. I've had blood sugar of 55 and went to the gym.
Because your body was running on ketones, instead of
Yes. My
glucose.
ketones were around 6 and I was at the gym and I rode 10 miles on the bike and lifted some weights, came home.
So the purpose of doing something like that for you was a medical reason.
It was a medical reason.
You chose to be much more dramatic with this diet, I would say.
Well, here's what happened with me. I had stage 3 bladder cancer. There's only one treatment for that in the United States. They basically take you in, they remove your bladder, they remove your prostate, and then they have this really long operation to where they take your intestines and cut a piece of it out and form a new bladder and try to fashion you a new bladder out of that intestine. Right. And so it's a very long, expensive procedure, but that is the standard therapy for stage 3 bladder cancer, because stage 3 basically means it's grown through the wall of the bladder into the fatty tissue surrounding it, and it's ready to go everywhere all over in your body. And so they just find the safest way to deal with that is to remove it all. And
okay, but that's not what you did.
No, I didn't do that. I didn't want to do it. I wasn't very interested in that.
You weren't very interested in that.
I just kept seeing myself hiking out in the desert with a bag on my side. I didn't know.
So you researched what else?
Well, so I went home.
But you did have surgery.
I had a biopsy, which I did in the hospital because they do what they call a bladder resection, I think it's called. Basically, they scrape your bladder really deeply to remove as much tumor as they can, because they have to send it to they have to send it to the lab
pathology
to get the reading on to find out the exact tumor and all these other things. So they scrape it and then they kind of burn it inside, so cauterize it, and then you go home, and then they schedule you a month later. They want you to come in for the major surgery. Right.
So you had cancer, you had a tumor. It was very advanced.
Multiple tumors.
Right. It was very advanced. They take it out.
They scraped it out. And they didn't get all of it.
And then further procedures are possible in order to be more proactive, so that if the cancer could have spread anywhere else, that's the other surgery you would have had.
Normally they want you to come right back in and just do the major surgery.
So we're not giving anyone medical advice, but you elected not to do that. And instead you did what?
They wanted me back in 30 days, and I said, no, I really want to try something. So I put it off. This was about the 7th of July that summer. And I said, I'll come back in, and I scheduled something for near the end of September.
And what did you do?
I went home. At first, I was just confused. I didn't know what to do, but I was...
As many people are when they have
and I was
major
really down
surgery
and stuff. So
That's a whole story within itself.
That's a whole nother story. But anyway, what I found on the internet was that they just happened to be doing this set of stories in the New York Times on people with my cancer, bladder cancer, and how they're using this new immunotherapy and how they had all had their prostates and bladders removed and everything was done. And every single one of them in the story had cancer again 6 months later.
6 months later.
Yeah, and I thought, well, why go through the process if I'm going to get cancer again anyway? Why not just try and get rid of it now? And so after about 3 weeks of just juicing, and I was juicing because I didn't know what else to do, but I didn't really have much confidence in it because there was nothing about it that I could tell or really that science that was telling me anything was going on.
Right. So
I did know the juicing was really good, and it was really good for my particular condition, the type of juice I was doing. But I didn't have that much confidence in it. And
so
then
you continued researching.
I continued researching. A good friend of mine who had used the ketogenic diet to help with a brain tumor turned me on to a book which was called Tripping Over the Truth. And he explained in that book how Warburg's theory on cancer. And when I read that, and I read the different, stories about how they developed chemotherapy and radiation for cancer, and the ketogenic or the Warburg theory, that cancer runs on sugar, made sense to me. And that was something I could wrap my head around. And it just seemed to me at the moment that was going to be the thing that really helped me. So I just decided at that time to go into ketosis and give that diet a try.
Right. And you did that because, knowing you as I do, you're a researcher. You have been living a holistic lifestyle for many decades, right? So it wasn't suddenly like, oh, I'm just going to disregard what my doctor is telling me and do something else.
No, it's I've been in the health field since 1981 or so. So it's not like my first exposure to things that are going on, and I've been around enough and manufactured products for other companies that I know how to find and source things out what I want. And I know how to find research, and I just got into it. But the ketogenic diet I knew was the basis of it, and I loved the idea of being able to switch my metabolism and starve it. So no matter what you're going to do to anything, any therapy, if you're starving your cancer, it's going to make it weak. That was my theory. So I realized,
your cancer story is an entire, I think that's another podcast that we could get into another time.
So I just got into it and lowered my blood sugar to a certain range, got my ketones way up, and literally starved my cancer to death.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What is the largest difference between the ketogenic diet as a lifestyle choice for people that, just want to be a little healthier or want to lose weight versus what you're talking about, which is medical ketosis.
The main difference is that you always want to have your blood sugar and your ketones in a certain ratio. And this ratio came about by the main, metabolic cancer researcher, basically, Thomas Seefeld, I think is his name. I hope I didn't mispronounce that. But he wrote the book on cancer as a metabolic disease, right? And so he has in his book a certain equation that you can follow to see if you're in really good medical ketosis.
So using medical ketosis, as you did, is part of a paradigm of seeing cancer as a metabolic disease. So the way you treated your cancer has to do with how you conceived of it as a metabolic
faulty metabolism.
Okay. And so, again, it's not medical advice. It's simply what you did for yourself.
So the theory is if it has a faulty metabolism and you can starve it, then you have a really great chance of getting rid of your cancer. So in medical ketosis, though, you have to fall into this equation so that your body's in what they term to be medical ketosis. And that equation has to do with taking the number, which is your blood sugar, right? You take that number and you divide that by 18 to give you the metric number, because almost all medicine in the world runs on metrics, right? So that's just for the ease of doing this, because I did this when I had cancer. You want to shoot for blood sugar that's 72, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because when you divide it by 18, you get 4. And so if you can raise your ketones to 4, right, then what happens with this equation? You divide your 72 by 18, you now have 4. And if your ketones are 4, you divide that by that, and you get 1. And 1 is the magic number you shoot for. You want to have a ketone glucose index of 1. Well, this is a very specific part of it, because every day you want to shoot for that number, because you want to keep your sugar down. If your sugar's down, and 72 is not that hard to do, especially with all the modern things we have that make it easier.
All right, so tell me again about this equation that you use to figure out how to do a medical ketogenic diet, which is different than the lifestyle choice or nutritional ketogenic diet that people are using for general health or weight loss.
So the equation is called the glucose ketone index, and you want to shoot for a number of 1, right? Because that means you're in perfect ketosis, according to cancer as a metabolic disease. So I always used to make it easier, just thought I'm going to shoot for my blood sugar always to be 72 or below, because that's an easy to divide number. 18 equals 4. And then my ketones are easily 4 every day, because you're going to divide your ketones into your blood sugar number. Then you get a number 1, right? So first number, say your blood sugar 72. I'll go over it one more time. Your blood sugar 72. You divide it by 18 to get the metric number. That is 4. You have a ketone level of 4, then you divide that into 4, and you get 1. And so anyway, every day would be 1 or below. And I would, my blood sugar might be anywhere from 55 to 75. My ketones were always 4 to 6. And it was not hard for me to maintain that. And the reason for that, and the reason you don't have to starve today, is because we have things like MCT oil.
What is MCT oil?
It stands for medium chain triglyceride. It's a type of fat that makes up coconut oil. Well, now they refine coconut oil to give you just the MCTs. Well, MCTs, when you take them, turn into ketones really fast.
Why would you want to take something that's been processed as opposed to just eating more coconut oil?
Because the coconut oil doesn't have as much MCT in it. It's only half MCT.
Ah, I see.
And your goal in all of this is the level of ketones and the level of sugar. You don't care about anything else, whether the one oil you're using in your whole diet is refined. You want it to transform into ketones quickly, so that you're always using this as kind of a helper to maintain your ketosis. So it's easy for your body to do it. So now your ketones are always between 4 and 6, and that, as long as you keep your blood sugar around 72, you're in perfect ketosis.
Medical ketosis.
Medical ketosis, and that is much easier than having to starve before, because I didn't starve, and I lost some weight initially, but then I gained it all back because I realized I just wasn't drinking water. That was my problem. And so I didn't really lose weight. I was eating.
You just weren't drinking enough water, you mean?
I ate over 2,000 calories a day. I wasn't starving, but I was in medical ketosis.
Why did you need more water in this particular diet?
Because in that particular diet, your kidneys process water differently. Your metabolism changes. You are changing your metabolism from sugar to fat. And so, I was so new to it, and a lot of this information wasn't even out when I started doing it. And so I found it one day, realized that was my issue, started drinking some water, and I put on 5 pounds so fast I was just dehydrated, right? So, but you learn all these things as you go along. But that's how I did it, and that's really what medical ketosis was. I got excited about it because every day I knew that I was starving my cancer. And 6 weeks down the road, my cancer was gone.
Wow.
So, I'm never gonna hear me say that the ketogenic diet is is a bad thing, or the ketogenic diet is even hard. I mean, having cancer is hard.
Having cancer is hard.
Being told they're going to take your organs out and make bags out of your intestine, that's hard.
That's hard.
Eating ketogenic is not hard compared to that.
So there's a lot of information out there about the ketogenic diet as, a lifestyle choice. How can people find more information if they're interested about the relationship between medical ketosis and the ketogenic diet in relation to cancer?
Well, there's such an explosion of information on ketogenic diet now. You go to Amazon, the list of books is endless, and they have some incredible books out.
Okay. And we will be doing
diet.
Another podcast about your process of having cancer, your journey, and more specifics about how exactly your ketogenic diet looked when it was to kill cancer versus just a lifestyle choice of ketogenic diet.
Yes, we'll be going over that in a future podcast.
Thanks for tuning in today for our podcast on ketogenic diet. This is Laura.
And this is Roger Drummer. Thanks for tuning in. If you want more information, go to HerbWorks.com.